a sport and an organisation which would fall over without immigrant labour. Premier League collapses, football collapses without immigrants, and he knows how toxic it is. That's the point. It's a kind of vice signalling, and it's saying the nasty thing in order to create almost a kind of a toxic personal brand, because you think that's what's going to be best for your own interests, whether they be business interests or political interests.
Hello, what's this? A sacking before a podcast? Is Evangelos Marinakis trying to undermine the behemoth that is the Guardian Football Weekly? Welcome everybody. It's panic time at the bottom. Sean Dyche gets sacked by Nottingham Forest. Here comes Vitor Pereira. A goalless draw with Wolves, not enough to save Dyche. He must be wondering how they didn't score that 6-1 in the first half. In more traditional news, you got your voice note yesterday. It's what we all wanted. Thomas Frank sacked by Spurs shortly after we finished recording. We'll analyse where it went wrong and how good an interim of Redknapp, Sherwood and Hoddle will go, or anyone. Then back to the football. Burnley couldn't survive, could they? I mean, no, obviously, but a great win for them at Palace. For a few minutes, all of Jurgen Strand-Larsen's fears must have disappeared, but then 3 goals in 5 minutes for Scott Parker, who sounded just as miserable as usual afterwards, but great for him. Palace aren't out of the woods. Meanwhile, another defeat for Brighton. At least if he does get the sack, Fabian Hurzëler's young enough to retrain to do something else. Good win for Villa to keep the chasing pack at arm's length, and a good win for Liverpool, the first team to do that at Sunderland. They were good, and is that ominous Manchester City we see dispatching Fulham in the first half. In other news, Jim Ratcliffe, who moved to Monaco as an immigrant a few years ago, starts immigrant bashing in the UK. What a guy. Barry says he has an interesting fact on every one of the 16 FA Cup ties this weekend. Hold on to your hats. We'll answer your questions. And that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Will Unwin, hello.
Good morning, Max.
Johnny Liew, welcome.
Hi.
And the man with the facts, Barry Glendenning, hello.
Hi, Max.
John says, decent of Marinakis to fire Dyche before the pod is recording, avoiding the need of a voice note. However, knowing him, he'll have hired and subsequently fired Dyche's replacement just after the pod has been recorded. So a voice note will be needed. Let Barry do it for once. Okay, then. So the bottom of the Premier League is really interesting after the results last night. Burnley, 18 points from 26, West Ham 24, Forest 27, Spurs 29, Leeds 30, Brighton 31 and Palace 32. We'll start with the sacking of Sean Dyche. Will, you were there last night to see the goalless draw. What do you make of what happened, apart from the fact it meant you had a very late night?
I think in terms of the match, obviously Forest were very unlucky. 35 shots, none going in is surprising. I mean, not many Dyche teams have 60% possession, but every time he has had 60% possession, he's failed to win in a match in 10 times in his career, according to Opta, which is quite a feat. Not a man keen on dominating matches. So I think they were lucky on that level. The ground was probably one level below toxic from early on. Every misplaced pass, failed shot, brought irritation, and Marinakis was in the stands, and the sort of classic TV coverage, you always the screens kept panning to Marinakis when something went awry, and he did not look happy. The jacket went off in the second half, which is a bold move in February to show that something's not right. So afterwards, Dyche came into the press conference and said, well, if he wants to sack me, that's up to him. And I was all wondering a bit, thinking, this doesn't seem particularly right, but maybe even Forest will take sort of 24 hours to review the situation, because Dyche was the pragmatic choice when he came in. Dyche did well when he came in. Dyche has only lost one in the past 6 games. They're not doing badly. And if you appoint Sean Dyche, you have to accept that for the players who, it seems, struggled with his methods, they're going to have an intense time on the training ground to get what Dyche wants out of them. And on top of that, the football's not likely to be particularly attractive, which is what he's done throughout his career. And the only reason they had to appoint Sean Dyche is because Marinakis sacked Nuno and appointed Ange Postecoglou, which was a disaster. And they needed someone like Dyche to get them out of the mess. So I think it's a bit, naive maybe at the moment to make a third sacking of the season. You look at what they did last summer, that there was a lot of players came in, a couple more came in January, or 3 more came in January. There's a lot of players to integrate. It's quite hard for a player to adapt to a new club when you're having 4 managers within 6 months or so. And this is it. And it's just, at the moment, I appreciate they're in a relegation battle, but Dyche is there to get them out of that and probably would. And it's just a mess of their own making, and how that changes in the near future, I don't know. Victor Pereira is going to come in, it looks like, almost certainly. And good luck to him for the final 13 games. But yeah, nothing seems particularly well on the Trent, and external factors can't really be blamed at this stage.
So Nuno had 23 days, Ange 39. Dyche had 114 days, Barry. What do you make of the sacking?
It's not really a surprise because we know Evangelos Marinakis is quite a volatile character who is prone to mood swings. He was there last night sitting in the director's box looking extremely unhappy with Forest's performance. So usually when you get those cutaways to Evangelos Marinakis mid-game, it only means one thing, that the manager who is in the technical area is not long for this world. So it wasn't a shock. I'm not sure it's a very well thought out decision, but then Marinakis tends to fly by the seat of his pants, and I suspect Sean Dyche won't be that bothered, and he and Woney and Stoney will have a nice day in the pub today, and check their bank accounts to see how the payments come through.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there might still be time for them to get another gig to save somebody else.
That Burnley win at Palace was unfortunate for Dyche, because he could go back to his spiritual home, or there might have been a vacancy at his spiritual home if they hadn't won that game.
That's true. Oh, we'll get to that. I mean, there were reports, Johnny, that Marinakis was personally debriefing the team in the dressing room with Sean Dyche inside the room, which you can imagine Dyche would have loved. Dyche, after the game, was very quick to point out that statistically they were doing better now than when he arrived. And he said, when we arrived, we were 2 points above the relegation zone. Now we're 3 points above the relegation zone, which, I mean, statistically he is right, but it isn't a huge amount above the relegation zone. And I just guess, you saw it with Tottenham, there are lots of teams panicking now that they could get relegated because the bottom of the table is incredibly tight.
Yeah, I mean, is that really a statistic? Like three is more than two. I guess that's a Dyche-style statistic.
It is a statistic, I get. I mean, it's
analytics with Sean Dyche. If you look at the graph here, no, I'm being insolent as usual. He's right that they are doing slightly better. I mean, they interviewed Elliot Anderson afterwards, and they said it was the most shots on goal that a Premier League team had in 10 years without scoring. And they told Elliot Anderson this, and his face just kind of fell. He's like, yeah, typical. It was that sort of night. It's been that sort of season for Forest. And, you may well ask, what is the through thread? What is the common line from Nuno to Ange Postecoglou to Dyche to very possibly Vitor Pereira? And of course there isn't one. Forest are one of those clubs where they don't have a defined style of play. They don't have a footballing identity beyond Marinakis. It's one of those unusual football clubs where the owner is basically the defining style of the club, and whatever side of the, I imagine, massive king size bed he gets out on in the morning defines the direction of that football club that day. And he's right to be worried that the football is terrible. The football has been terrible, but you kind of have to ask, what were you expecting with Sean Dyche when you appoint him? But also the fact that sort of 13th to 18th area in the Premier League has really kind of concertinaed. If you look at the way that West Ham have kind of recovered in the last few weeks, almost brings to mind that 02-03 season when it was West Ham who went down with 42 points, I think. If you look at it, Burnley and Wolves probably adrift. You have you then have a load of teams competing for 18th spot, and it is quite possible that if they carry on their current rate, that the team in 18th could still end up with about a point a game. You could have someone going down on 38, maybe even 40 points. So that brings teams like Leeds, Spurs, Forest, maybe even Palace into the mix if West Ham keep improving. So that's why I think we're getting a lot of itchy trigger fingers, because there are a lot of teams who maybe thought they were safe, are now realising, hang on, we're not.
The YouTube viewers excited to have the Liew family in the background. Our listeners don't get that pleasure, but you can watch us if you like. Will, do we think Vitor Pereira is a good choice to come in? He did really well at Wolves when he came in, didn't he?
He's got a few things going for him. That he did have an immediate impact at Wolves when he came in, that turned them around very quickly, won the first game away at Leicester, so shows he can change things at speed. And then on top of that, he's worked with Marinakis before, which is helpful for someone to understand what they're getting into, which some people don't always. And he plays the right formation, I think. I suspect he'll play with what he's got with the 4-2-3-1. I think he'll utilise that. And he does know the Premier League. He is a good man manager. He gets the best out of people. He's very likeable, as Wolves fans will tell you. I don't know which pub he'll drink in Nottingham. I think that'll be interesting to find out in the coming weeks. So I was saying, and I've got the text messages to prove it last week. It's like, if they do sack him, it'll be Pereira, because he was the obvious person to bring in, and it's possibly also being indoctrinated by watching too much Forest and knowing, how they work over recent years, that this would be the outcome. So yeah, I think it's probably the most sensible choice if you're gonna have a fourth manager of the season. But I mean, good luck to him. I mean, just as a further point, obviously I got in at midnight. I didn't see my daughter yesterday, but I kicked her out at 7:20 to go to breakfast club, just so I didn't have to deal with what Johnny's dealing with, because that looks terrible. She came in this morning, "Oh, Daddy, I missed you." And I said, "Get out. I'm writing about Vitor Pereira being appointed at Nottingham Forest. Do you not understand?"
There are priorities, aren't there? I mean, just on the game, Barry, it is worth pointing out, there was that amazing still image of that moment where Forest had a 6-on-1 and didn't score. It's just an amazing moment in a football match.
It was fantastic. It reminded me of that scene from Game of Thrones, the Battle of the Bastards, when Jon Snow was sitting alone on his horse in front of the massed ranks of Ramsay Bolton's army, and they're charging towards him at full gallop, and he just draws his sword. And in this instance, Hugo Bueno was in the Jon Snow road with these 6 Forest players charging towards him at full pace. Callum Hudson-Odoi pinged in a low cross. I mean, he couldn't fail to pick out a teammate, but unfortunately for him, he picked out Lorenzo Luca, who somehow managed to shank the ball over the bar and over the roof of the stand, out of the stadium into the River Trent. On any other night, you presume Forest would have won that game very comfortably indeed, but the finishing last night was atrocious. They missed so many good chances. Wolves had a few chances of their own as well and could have possibly nicked it. Matthias Mane had a reasonably good chance towards the end and shot straight at Stefan Ortega, but Forest, yeah, they should have won by a lot.
And if they win by a lot, then Dyche presumably is still there, which is, that's the way of this, isn't it? To Spurs then, we might as well do the sackings all together. The statement says the club's taken the decision to make a change in the men's head coach position, and Thomas Frank will leave today. Results and performances have led the board to conclude that a change at this point of the season is necessary. He was there for 8 months. After 7 games, Spurs were third, 2 points behind Arsenal. They'd beaten Man City away. Since then, only Burnley and Wolves have picked up fewer points than them. In 9 games, no wins, 2 wins in 18. Frank has the lowest points per game average of any Tottenham manager in Premier League history. They are overperforming their XG. And their worst games under him, they generated 0.1 XG at home to Chelsea and 0.07 away at Arsenal. Johnny, your thoughts?
Yeah, it didn't work, did it? I mean, tried it. It failed miserably. Pack him off with a rifle, send him off to Greenland, send him back to Borgen. It's I'd say, yeah, I know. A lot of people were saying this was a pragmatic. It was a pragmatic appointment after the madness of Ange Postecoglou. We got a nice, sensible. Let's get a nice, sensible Scandinavian man in. And I don't honestly think the decision was any more thought through than that. I really don't think Tottenham put any more thought into it. You know, Levy liked the analytics, he liked the data, the underlying data, but the transposition of Frank from Brentford, which is a very well-run club with a very well-defined structure. You know, it's Benham, it's the owner, it's the director of football, and then it's Frank, and the lines of authority are very clear. At Spurs, it's a lot more. They are very much going in through a period of boardroom transition. You know, they've lost a sporting director. We've had the departure of Levy. We basically now have an executive that is trying to learn football on the fly. There are no lines of authority, really. Everyone's still trying to learn where the lines of authority are. And this doesn't excuse any of the football, which has been awful. But I think as well as being, too big for him in a stature sense, I think the job was physically too big for Thomas Frank. You know, he would turn up. There's a great piece by Miguel Delaney in the Independent. There were things that he was expected to do at Spurs that were just handled for him at Brentford. He wasn't. You know, the job was physically just there were duties that he didn't realise he was going to have to do. And
Which is weird because Brentford is a smaller club. You'd imagine there'd be more people to do more stuff at Tottenham. But
right,
there isn't.
But then, you know, he turns up, he says, who's in charge of the discipline here? And Spurs are like, well, it's the manager. The manager's in charge. But at Brentford we had there was somebody on the sporting director, there was something on the performance team who was assigned to this, like who's my point of contact on this? No, well, we don't really have that kind of thing. And then, you get the fact that the football was really bad. And, if you try to appoint I guess, not a reactive manager, because I think he did try to play football, but he was also trying to fix a defence. He was basically trying to build from a solid base. And if you do that, you kind of have to win. You kind of have to get results on your side. And you have to not keep giving away free headers in the 6-yard box. So I don't know where they go from here. It's a really rotten, diseased club, and I think Frank has almost kind of he's a bit damaged goods now. So I don't think it's been a move that's been very good for anyone.
There's been interesting, Barry. I don't know if you've seen it. Like a Brentford fan has done this. It's about 4 minutes long, just saying, "Look what Brentford do." Right? They brought in Uwe Rosler. They did well. Rosler did better there than anywhere before. He thought, "I'm good at this." Went somewhere else, failed. They brought in Mark Warburton, same thing, didn't have a lot of experience in the Championship. He did better than they'd ever done before. He went, I'm good at this, went to Rangers, failed. They're the same with Dean Smith, right, who went to Villa and it didn't really work out, and now Thomas Frank. And so somebody showed this to Keith Andrews, right, because that's a really interesting part of the dynamic at Brentford that they have working, that the manager is just a cog rather than the whole damn machine.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Wilson's hero, Valery Lobanovsky, the former Dynamo Kiev manager, who had this wonderful Dynamo Kiev football team, and other European teams started signing players from them, but the transfers never worked out, because they were just small cogs in this incredibly well-run Dynamo Kiev machine that couldn't function elsewhere once they were taken out of that machine and put into a different one. And maybe that is the case at Brentford, and could be similar. Brighton or a similarly run club. We would need to see a greater sample size, I think. I don't think Thomas Frank is a bad manager. I just think he was the wrong fit at Spurs. I thought he would be a good fit, but clearly he wasn't.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he would be a good fit, and I thought the Super Cup, I was like, oh, look, a pragmatic manager. Kevin Danso has a long throw. This is exciting. We're doing things differently. We're adapting to a better team. And then it sort of ended up being, actually, all they do is Kevin Danso has a long throw, and that isn't quite as good. I mean, look, we talked about Dyche and needing luck, right? If they win last night, it's different. Thomas Frank, a bit like Ange Postecoglou, he's had loads of injuries, right? He's missed his whole creative force there in Maddison and Kulusevski, and other players have been injured. He's got this weird attack, and you sort of think, if that's worth 3 wins, say, that are defeats at the moment, then they're pushing on the door of the Champions League. I don't know. I think you have to be lucky as well as good, and I think he was probably neither, Will.
Yeah, where last night at Forest, every time there was a missed chance, it went to Marinakis. Every time on Tuesday at Tottenham, it went to this collection of injured and suspended players sat looking slightly miserable, and to sort of sum up the issues on the pitch. And I think that is, I'm saying every week, obviously, Postecoglou's failed, Frank's failed, maybe the problems are bigger, as Johnny was saying. And the recruitment has always seemed a bit odd, and it is fantastic that you're signing the best young players in Europe, and that's your model, and I'm sure Frank was in favour of all that, but the balance of those signings never seemed right. The top quality experience, I know Pellegrini's been there, but had a good start, but not been pulling up trees since, and the defence has always looked a bit off and problematic when your captain is layering off on social media repeatedly, but then getting sent off at the weekend. So I think he has been unlucky. It's quite hard to turn a team around from finishing 17th to become, I don't know, the Champions League team that the club think it should be in such a short period of time when you're changing tactics. These things take time, and by having those injuries, he's not earned it. Similar when the fans go Tuesday night, I was watching the game, it just seemed pretty silent, whatever was happening, apart from the equaliser, and there's no belief. And so those things will count against you as well. And the reason there's no belief, because you're not getting wins. The reason you're not getting wins, arguably, because you're missing some of your best players. Kudos, because these are the players that make things happen. These are players that excite fans as well, and you're sort of lacking a bit of that. Xavi Simons has never, he should be one of those players, but isn't. Solanke missed a long period, and I think Frank's probably just been a little bit unfortunate. You can look at his coffee cup with the Arsenal badge on that he, brought from home, and whatnot. But yeah, I think he has just been a bit unlucky, in that the problems are far, far bigger than the dugout and even the injury list.
Arguably, he's done nothing well. Like, there were a few good results at the start, but he hasn't. The attacking data has gone off a cliff. The creativity has gone off a cliff. They haven't defended well. He hasn't made good substitutions, really. He hasn't used his squad well. He hasn't, and ultimately hasn't spoken very well. I think as a Spurs manager, it's really, really important. This is why Ange was such a good fit initially. You have to speak well, because you have to bridge that incredible gap between expectation and reality. Spurs are a club that has to have a story about it. If Spurs is not a story, it's nothing. And Frank had no idea of what he wanted to be. And I think for a lot of fans, it meant accepting kind of a smaller, sadder, colder place in the world. And I don't think that is what inspires people.
So who should they get, Johnny? Surely they need a vibe. They need to win 3 or 4 games and then see what happens in the Champions League. So they need I think a vibes person. They need vibes.
Yeah, De Zerbi is a name that I like. They obviously want Pochettino. I don't think Pochettino is the right fit at all. He's Pochettino 2026 is not the Pochettino of 2014. De Zerbi is what I like, because I think he instantly lights a bomb under the whole thing, and you want to see how they're going to play. Obviously, I think it ends in tears, but all Spurs managers, all Spurs reigns end in tears. They're like political careers. It's just the journey you can take people on in the meantime.
So what about Ange back? What about, is this totally ludicrous for vibes? It would be
a lot of fans would have it. I don't think they should have sacked him. By the way, I mean, people, I don't think they should have sacked him after winning the Europa League. They should have, they needed to ride that train all the way to the end. Again, is it different? Is it different when you come back for a second spell, when you're almost trying to prove yourself, where you're trying to prove a few people wrong? Is it ever right to go back? I don't know, but I think Spurs need a manager who can light a bomb under them.
Things are bad at a football club when lighting a bomb under it is a positive.
Yes, yeah.
This will sort it out.
I agree.
We've got the fella from the quarry coming to just sort out that. Yeah, the house, the roof is leaking. What are we going to do to sort it out? We'll bomb it.
No, but they do need somebody who is in the dugout for that Arsenal game that the fans like. Like the fans go, yeah, I want this. Everyone has to be on it. If it's heighting you just go, they'll all just go, meh. And, Arsenal take the lead after 10 minutes and that'll be, oh God. Anyway, more on that and on. That'll do for part one. Part two, we'll do Burnley's brilliant win at Crystal Palace. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. Rich says, look, we are still going down, but can you have a huge shout for us somehow scoring 3 goals in 5 minutes? It's nice to remember just how much fun football can be. Burnley only the second team to go 2 down in the first half of a Premier League away game and still go in ahead at the break after Spurs at Newcastle in 1995. You've watched a lot of Burnley this season, Will. Good for you. Did you think they had it in them?
No, absolutely not. 2-0 down. I think they've had some positive performances that haven't led to results, especially in recent weeks. But I think in the past couple of games, the West Ham game, they were pretty awful, absolutely terrible, and it looked like I'd say they'd gone. Mentally, that this season's over. We can't compete at this level, and going 2-0 down away at Palace, a team who have done well in the past, but not having a great season. You'd have thought maybe this is the end. Change things up in the last couple of games. I think Hannibal playing is to add a bit of fire into what can be quite a passive team at times, because he's a bit of a headless chicken often, but he showed great composure for his goal, and
like any headless chicken would.
Exactly.
That's what was known. What we know about headless chickens is composure.
It shows the variety that Burnley have available. And Jadon Anstey is a really good Championship player, which there's no shame in that. And he can, on his day, perform for the 19th best club in the Premier League. And you saw what it meant to Parker at the end. He's not always the most animated person on touchline, but he probably enjoyed the celebration. And the other thing about it, it's fine having that 5-minute period where everything's going really well, but did manage to hang on for a whole 45 minutes. Yeah, considering the defence.
You really
thought
you were just waiting for Palace to equalise. Just going on corner after corner. Later on, you're like, oh, this is never going to end well, and it did.
Yeah, Joe Worrell in there, a bit more experience, amid the headless chickens, quite sensible. Because I think Walker's looked suspect in recent weeks. You saw for the opener, got done by Strand Larsen. But yeah,
I want to stick up for the headless chicken. I want to stick up for the headless. What other animal can you chop the head off and it's still walking around? Are they walking around like headless chicken? That's a miracle. That's a miracle of anatomy.
Still doing a job in the lower reaches of the Premier League.
Do die quite quickly though. I mean, it's not like they don't sort of carry on, do they? I mean, I'm sure I'm pretty sure there's. Yeah, obviously.
I have decapitated quite a few chickens in my life, and I have never seen one run around after losing its head.
That's you're just such a cold-blooded killer, Barry, aren't you? When you do the job, you get it done. What's your kill count, do you reckon, on chickens?
My chicken body count, I'd say it's in the high hundreds. Yeah.
I suppose you lose feeling after the first few.
First one's the hardest.
Or is it do you have an implement, or do you just bare hands?
A knife, Jonathan.
God.
Just to be clear, I'm not some sort of bloodthirsty murderer who does it for kicks. I was working on a friend's chicken farm for a couple of weeks.
When was your last kill, Barry?
I would have been 40 years ago, probably.
40 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow. So you were doing it as an 11-year-old or something?
12, I reckon. 12 or 13.
It's no age to start people decapitating chickens. I think, really, is it? I don't know.
Does sound like the first chapter of a true crime story, to be fair.
Doesn't it?
Well, Max, when you're having your Thai green curry or your KFC, those chickens didn't jump into the pot voluntarily. Someone had to get them there.
No.
Yeah, small child slave labour.
Running around like an Oliver Glasner defence.
Exactly. Has Barry killed more chickens than James Milner's made Premier League appearances? Asked producer Joel. It's hard to say. He's up to, what was he up to now? 653. Maybe Milner's got it. But listen, Milner won't go on forever. Barry could go back to killing chickens. We're going to have to keep a totalizer, aren't we? Burnley couldn't get out of this, Barry, could they?
They only played well for 10 minutes yesterday.
Do you feel for Jorgen Strand Larsen, Baz? Because, a bit like Brennan Johnson, but perhaps even worse, he's left Wolves. Everything is fine. Look, I kick it, it goes in. I head it, it goes in. This is fine. Football is easy. And then it isn't.
Yeah, it's a sickener, isn't it, for him? Oliver Glasner was interesting talking afterwards. He basically accused his players of having gone 2-0 up, sort of trying to show off and playing like they were having a kickabout in the park or playing with your kids in the garden. But he was quick to stress, obviously, you don't tackle your children when you're playing with them in the garden. But there weren't too many tackles going in from Palace players either. They were losing 50-50s. They were giving the ball away. And it was a good mugging by Burnley, but I would be astonished if they kick on and go on a long winning run from here. But who knows?
Yeah, so we're 8 points clear of the relegation zone, Palace. They know Glasner's going, Johnny, but they could get dragged down to it.
I think they'll just about be okay. I think there were just about enough goals in that team, just enough creativity. But what happens is they've been through hell this season, on and off the pitch. And what happens, I think, when a team starts to really flag is that they can still score goals because people like scoring goals. What tends to slip is like the organisation, the spacing, the last ditch stuff, like the bodies on the line stuff, and that's how I think you end up conceding 3 goals in 10 minutes. And I think there is a physical and mental exhaustion to them, which I think is a product of everything they've been through this season. I think they will just be about fine, but they are flagging quite badly.
Villa won Brighton 0. Matthew says, don't do the pod until Brighton sack Fabian Hurzëler. Really big 3 points for Villa, especially with Chelsea and Manchester United dropping points on Tuesday. They are 8 points clear of Liverpool in 6th, if we presume 5th will get you in the Champions League. But Baz, 1 win in 13 for Brighton.
Yeah, they're having a bad season. I think Brighton fans are making no secret of the fact that they're not happy. This wasn't a good game, but Villa did just enough to win it. Mings' header kind of went in off Jack Hinchelwood at a late corner. I think Villa should probably have had a penalty as well. One of the Brighton players, I can't remember who, blatantly shoved Tammy Abraham.
Yeah.
But that led to a corner, and it was that corner they scored from, I think. So they got their just desserts in the end. But I suppose the main talking point from this game is James Milner equaling Gareth Barry's record number of Premier League appearances on 653. So congratulations to him. No doubt he will go on to beat the record. And I don't want to take anything away from what is a brilliant achievement from Milner, who I have a lot of admiration for. I remember him making his debut as a 16-year-old. But the disparity in the number of minutes both players have played is enormous. So Gareth Barry has played almost 14,000 more minutes in the Premier League than Milner, which is the equivalent of about 155 matches. And I have noticed a lot of Villa fans are a bit chippy about the fact that Milner is going to take Gareth's record because Gareth has played so much more or spent so much more time on the pitch with him. But phenomenal achievement from both players. I don't like Gareth Barry purely because he missed a sitter for Villa one time years and years ago that cost me a lot of money in my coupon busting miss at the death. I think it was a penalty actually he missed, but anyway. So I'm in Team Milner on this one.
Fine. Well, he was so tired after all those minutes, wasn't he? Good of you to bring an interesting fact before your 16 interesting facts, but we'll get to
I
them.
feel we may not get through all 16 of them.
We can try our
might have
best,
to do a bonus track.
Okay, fine. To the top of the table then, Man City are now 3 points behind Arsenal, having played a game more. Arsenal playing Brentford tonight, of course. They beat Fulham 3-0, 3-0 up at half-time. This looked like a sort of classic Manchester City, I think. Well, I mean, Fulham had a couple of breaks, didn't they? But apart from that, this was City playing good football, exciting football, lots of players involved in the goals, and I don't know if this means they're going to start one of those runs, but it's exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah, and obviously, you look at Semenyo scoring lots of different types of goals. That's five now for City already. It's always difficult in the January market to sign players, and they probably cost you a bit more money than you want to pay. But the role of those players is to instigate change, to ignite a season. And you look at Gay, you look at Semenyo, they're doing that. They're changing how City play. They're looking a bit more solid at the back. They're looking more aggressive in the final third. And that's really helping City. You talk about the good play, but the intensity in the press, which I think sometimes lacks when things aren't going well for City, that wasn't the case. Everyone was on top of Fulham, making them, make mistakes at the back and things like that. And Haaland scoring from open play is always useful. And even when he's not been scoring, you see how well he takes that goal. It's really impressive. Foden maybe should have been sent off for a nasty foul on Calvin Bassey, but on the upside, did look a bit more back to himself, a bit more lively, a bit more creative when he was on the ball. So he can, gloss over the old red card.
Well, actually, I don't want to, because it is just such, Johnny, a frustration with VAR. When you look at that and you're like, how? All we want is consistency, Brian.
Yeah, but humans aren't consistent, and football is a game of a million subjectivities where no scenario ever actually perfectly recurs twice. It's not a closed system game, so you can't have consistency, and there's always going to be a subjective opinion. Is someone interfering with play? Is someone attempting to play the ball? So that the whole idea that you can get consistency is just nonsense.
No, of
it's
course,
the sort of thing people like to spout on. I was going to say TalkSport. I forgot you both work for TalkSport.
No, but hang on. It's not subjective that he raked the guy's Calvin Bassey's ankles, is it? I mean,
but the what's subjective is the judgment over level of force, level of aggression. These are kind of value judgments.
In the big consistency versus common sense debate, in this game, Kenny Tete pulled Antoine Semenyo's dreadlocks and didn't get sent off, whereas Michael Keane got sent off for doing the exact same thing to Tolo Arakadere, the Wolves player. So you could argue neither should have been sent off, or both should have been sent off, but one was, the other wasn't. I don't really care one way or the other, but it just,
all I want
different
is
officials have a different opinion of what constitutes a red card offence.
I think just the other thing on City in recent weeks, that Pep's decided that Rodri really can't play that defensive midfield role by himself, and there's lots of extra support in there, which is really helping him, and quite a pragmatic move from Guardiola, which you probably didn't want to do, but O'Reilly's not really good in there. Bernardo Silva being in central positions is really helpful, and a sign that this is how City are going to play and look a bit more formidable, a bit sturdier in that position, so they're not suffering on the counter as much as they have been in recent weeks. So I know Rodri did try to pull someone back when Fulham did counter at one point, because that seems to be his go-to move at the moment. But it's a good sign for City that maybe they've accepted their own flaws and moved to correct them, rather than being a bit headstrong, potentially. They have been in the past expecting Rodri to get back to Ballon d'Or winning ways very quickly when it's quite difficult after ACL.
To the Stadium of Light, Sunderland's first home defeat of the season in the league. They lost 1-0 to Liverpool. They missed Granit Xhaka a lot. And actually, Barry, Liverpool played really well in this game and should have won more comfortably.
Probably, yeah. This was ostensibly a 90-minute sumo wrestle between Ibrahima Konate and Brian Brobby, with a football match taking place around it. And Liverpool were the vastly superior team. Florian Wirtz was brilliant again. They had Sunderland defended well. Liverpool had to rely on a corner to score from Virgil van Dijk, but I don't think the scoreline reflected Liverpool's superiority. Certainly no shame in this defeat for Sunderland. And as you say, they are really missing Granit Xhaka, just for his qualities as a player, but I think more so his qualities as a leader and surrogate head coach on the pitch, because I thought Sunderland were a bit meek last night. I thought they could have done more going forward. It's basically a free hit for them. You know, this game doesn't matter if they lose. I thought they could have done a bit more on the attacking front. Sadly, for Liverpool and for Wataru Endo, he suffered a really bad ankle injury in that cursed right back position for Liverpool. He was filling in last night, and I think he overstretched for a ball and really did his ankle a mischief. But it led to a corner. He got back to his feet and played on for the corner, and then went down and went off on a stretcher. And you'd imagine that is probably bye-bye World Cup for Wataru, which is sad.
Liverpool then in 6th with 42 points. Chelsea have 44 in 5th. Manchester United 45 in 4th. Johnny, how do you see that sort of the race for 5th place going?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I think these things are so they're so dependent, or the way they feel is so dependent on short-term form that it's easy to get swayed by a couple of results. I think Liverpool really ground that out tonight. If that's the Liverpool we're going to see between now and the end of the season, I don't think they'll have any problems. It was almost it was a win out of last season's playbook. It was controlled and mature and measured. And we have, like, how many times this season have we seen them not close those sorts of games out? So I think Liverpool. I would have Liverpool in my top 5. Obviously, Arsenal and City as well. I do worry about Villa. I know they've got they've had some crucial wins recently, and they've shown a kind of resolve. But I just especially with Europe as well, and the comparative thinness of that squad when you put them up against the likes of United and Chelsea, I do wonder whether they're going to have enough in the last sort of 10-12 games to scrape together enough points. They are. I think they are going to get caught out. But so yeah. I mean, it's not a bold prediction, but I'd say the 5 richest clubs in the league will probably be the top 5.
Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Martin says, should Michael Carrick during pre or post-match press conference be asked for his opinions on what his boss has said about immigrants and them colonising the UK? Delta says, how much tax has Jim Ratcliffe evaded since moving to Monaco? Simon, I'd just like to hear Johnny Liew eviscerate Jim Ratcliffe, the tax-dodging bigot. He said in an interview with Sky News, you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK has been colonised. It's costing too much money. The UK has been colonised by immigrants, really, hasn't it? The population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people. The Office for National Statistics estimates the population of the UK was in fact 67 million in 2020 and 70 million in mid-2024. Keir Starmer said the comments were offensive and wrong. Britain is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe should apologise. Would you like to eviscerate Big Sir Jim, Johnny?
No, not at all. I just, on what was it? Was it Sunday? Saturday after the Spurs game? Some Sky Sports news guy asks Michael Carrick about who was that first question that you read out? Who I don't know who sent that in, but basically Carrick gets asked about the guy
Martin,
who's growing his hair, and he said, "I'm really sorry, I have to ask this." Obviously, he's been told by his, I have to ask you about the haircut. And Michael Carrick gets asked about the haircut. Bruno Fernandes gets asked about the haircut. Mateus Cunha has been asked to get asked about the haircut. The guy who's not having his haircut. Now, will those interviewers have the same courage to ask all of these same players about the views of their part owner of the club about a sport and an organisation which would fall over without immigrant labour? Premier League collapses, football collapses without immigrants, and that's not even the point, But I think it is interesting, the fact that he does feel emboldened to say this stuff now. We all know how wrong it is. We all know how toxic it is, and he knows how toxic it is. That's the point. It's almost it's a kind of vice signaling, and it's saying the nasty thing in order to create almost a kind of a toxic personal brand, because you think that's what's going to be best for your own interests, whether they be business interests or political interests. And it is a reflection of the climate that we're in politically, in terms of where people feel emboldened to talk about this stuff. I think it's racist. I think it's illiterate. It's basically illiterate about the a basic illiteracy about the history of humanity and this country and its society and its people. And again, he knows all that because he's not thick. He's a fucking prick, but he's not thick. So he knows what he's doing. And I think it's going to need Manchester United fans, and it's going to need the wider footballing public. And I think, it's going to need someone like players and coaches to speak up and say, we don't believe this. And whether they have the courage to do that, whether they have the balls to be able to speak up to their employer when there is something very clearly wrong being spoken, I think is going to be a big test of their moral fibre.
Well said. And I agree with every word.
It's basically that, that cartoon with Rupert Murdoch, the blue-collar worker and the immigrant sitting around the table, and the worker and the immigrant have, or Murdoch has a big plate of cookies in front of him. The worker has a plate with one cookie in it, and the immigrant has nothing in front of him. And Rupert Murdoch says to the builder, "Careful, mate, that guy wants to take your cookie." It's that wrought to life. And the weird thing is, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not only happy to accept hundreds of millions of pounds in benefits from the British government for his companies, but he appears to feel entitled to them. So, but Johnny pretty much nailed it, hasn't he?
Yeah. Just on the haircut guy, he is donating the hair to the Little Princess Trust, which is an amazing charity that makes wigs out of people's hair mainly for young people, but for anyone who has lost their hair because of chemotherapy or alopecia or other things. And, for a lot of people, that's, can be an incredibly difficult thing to happen when you're going through all sorts of difficult things. So I think he's raised a few £1,000s for the charity event, and he's going to donate his hair. And I spoke to the chief executive of that charity on the radio yesterday, and it's an amazing charity doing amazing things. So, that is a force for good. They're called the Little
Apparently,
Princess
the longer
Trust.
the hair,
Yes.
the more useful it is. So the worse Manchester United do, the better it is for those children.
Yeah,
so
that is. I think it's now of a length where they will accept the hair. The hair, I'm with my sort of thinning grey hair, that's no use. But if it's a certain length, but there are lots of people. I think it has to be 10 inches of hair or something. So mainly sort of women who are growing their hair. Actually, quite a lot of people donate a lot of hair to this charity, so it's a good thing.
I've written a column about the haircut guy today. If anyone wants to go check it out on the website.
Okay, good. I've written a column about maybe Anne should come back, but I don't really mean it, but it would be fun. Anyway, you read that if you want to. Come on, here we go, Barry. Fact by fact. FA Cup preview. We've got 5 minutes. Johnny, Will, you can chime in as and when you want. Do you want me to read a fixture and you give me the fact, Barry? Should we do that?
If you like, yeah.
Okay. As they came out of the hat, Hull City that will play Chelsea.
The Liam Senior derby, isn't it? Chelsea have played Hull 8 times in the FA Cup and beaten them every time.
I am the reason that Liam Rosenior is Chelsea head coach.
Okay, here we go.
So a few years ago, Hull sacked their manager, whoever it was, and they were going to appoint a new head coach. He went to a game. He went around the training ground. It was all looking rosy. I was on holiday in the Algarve, and I get a phone call from this manager, and he goes, "What do you think of Hull?" So we have a good 10-minute chat and whatnot. And he goes, "Right, okay, I've got to get. I'm at the airport. I've got to go home." And then, a few hours later, it was announced that deal wasn't going ahead, and Liam Rosenior comes in to take the job, and that set him on his way to stardom.
Right.
So yeah.
I like how Barry said, "I'm going to come up with a fact for every," and he does his first fact, and immediately Will comes in with a better fact.
Yeah. Well,
are you going to do this for all of them?
Yeah, do you have an anecdote for each game? Here we go, let's try. Wrexham versus Ipswich.
My Wrexham Ipswich fact.
I have interviewed Nathan Broadhead this season, who has played for both Wrexham and Ipswich.
Wrexham are unbeaten across their last 9 home matches in the FA Cup, dating back 3 years.
Not that fascinating. Burton versus West Ham. Barry.
This is all going horribly wrong. This is the first ever meeting between these two sides in any competition ever in the history of football.
I can't compete with that.
Norwich versus West Brom.
My interesting fact about this tie is that it's the only one of the 16 games being played this weekend that I couldn't come up with an interesting fact about.
It's the Graham Dorrans derby, surely. Southampton versus Leicester. Barry.
This will be the team's second meeting in 4 days, and Leicester will be hoping to win their 8th fourth-round tie out of 10.
Burnley Mansfield.
As of last Saturday, Burnley had only sold 8,000 home tickets for this game, and Mansfield had sold 5,000 for the away end. And it's only 10 quid a pop.
Okay. What have you got, Beth?
Mansfield have lost 17 of their 18 FA Cup games against top-flight opposition.
All right. They're up against it. What about Port Vale, Bristol City?
First meeting since 2015 and first ever meeting in the FA Cup.
Lovely. Man City, Salford City. I hope Joel put some music under this.
Yeah. Salford are playing in the fourth round for the first time in their history.
Good luck to them. Class of 92 versus City. That's a nice one.
And they also played Man City last season in the Cup and lost 8-0, if I remember correctly.
Righty-ho. Aston Villa, Newcastle?
In 5 of the previous 6 seasons, these sides have met in the Cup. It has either been in the final or the winners have got to the final.
Liverpool, Brighton?
This will be the 7th FA Cup tie between the teams, and the score is currently 3-3 on aggregate.
Birmingham, Leeds.
Leeds have reached the fourth round in each of the last 4 seasons, as many times as they'd managed in the previous 19 seasons combined.
Grimsby Town versus Wolves.
This is a good one now. This is my favourite fun fact.
Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Grimsby are playing their third opponent, whose name begins with W, in this season's FA Cup. They've already played Wealdstone and Weston-super-Mare. And if they win, they will join Fulham and Southampton in being the only 3 teams to knock out 3 teams beginning with the letter W in one season.
Imagine if they got Wigan in the next round. They'd have to win at Arsenal. To that fact in a second, but I'm doing it in order. Stoke, Fulham.
Fulham have won each of their last 7 cup ties against teams from a lower division, but Stoke have won each of their last 5 home FA Cup ties against teams from London. So something has to give.
Something's got to give, Clive. Oxford, Sunderland.
The last time Sunderland played Oxford in the FA Cup, they got to the final, and that was in 1992.
Arsenal, Wigan.
Mikel Arteta scored in the penalty shootout as Arsenal won the semi-final in the only previous FA Cup tie between these 2 sides.
Interesting. And finally, Macclesfield versus Brentford.
If Macclesfield win this, they will become the first non-league team to knock out 2 top-flight sides in one season since Millwall 112 years ago.
Thank you so much, Barry.
I would also like to thank Opta.
Okay, thank you, Opta. Yeah, and that's the closest to AI this podcast has ever got. Maybe that is the future. Thank you to everyone who commented on my toothbrushing technique in yesterday's video voice note, accusing me of swallowing toothpaste or brushing too hard.
Yeah, I found
voice note.
that unseemly. This toothpaste swallowing.
Yeah, well, it was, spitting is also unseemly on a voice note, isn't it? So maybe I should have just not been, because it was a bit affected. I wasn't brushing my teeth when the news came in. I started brushing my teeth in the video, then I started videoing, just to peep behind the curtain of how this is all made. But, we welcome all feedback.